They fall in love with them, and they think that the girl's a functional girl. And she tends to be more manipulative than the narcissistic or psychopathic versions. I mean, they will create problems where there's no problems and devalue you in such a way where you don't realize you're being devalued, and then discard the relationship, and you'll think it's you that's the problem, or you'll think she's normal, healthy, and what could I have done? Good to see you guys. We're going to talk about BPD today. Done a few videos on it. It's kind of been used as slang, in red pill circles and mano whatever sphere circles. You know what I mean? As more or less any chick that's crazy, we tend to call her BPD. But BPD is a real thing. Gotta get the candle going. BPD is a real thing, though, with a real diagnosis. There we go. And so, I mean, it's a real deal. And if you're dealing with somebody who has it, it's a nightmare. Can be anyway. All right. Because it can be a huge hindrance on just your own well-being, having to handle that in a relationship, let alone it's a huge hindrance in that person's life. Person who has it is dealing with some major issues. I think I'll start with, as I kind of get set up on a couple things, I think I'll start too with just more or less of a caveat. So one thing you understand about borderline personality disorder or any of the cluster B things, and there's a lot we don't know about these things, first of all. That's really important to understand. So for as much as psychologists do know, there's so much that they don't know. So anything we talk about here is not really a death sentence for anybody who's been given that diagnosis, because there's a lot that we don't know. I'm not coming at this from an angle of trying to be a clinician here diagnosing people on YouTube or something. Okay. I'm really coming at this from an angle of you as the person who's dating or dealing with a potential BPD person, kind of like what are the signs and what to do about it and why this is a trap for you to get into. So the purpose of this show really isn't to help somebody who has BPD figure out or treat their borderline personality disorder. That's something that requires treatment, not YouTube. All right. And so that's, and there's a question of, can somebody with BPD be treated? That's going to depend on the person and the severity. There has been people who have been able to treat it and get this, we could call it this disorder, for lack of a better term, under control but it takes a lot of work, a lot of therapy. Usually dialectical behavioral therapy is one of the most researched methods of being effective. If you have a BPD chick, or if you're dealing with one, or if you've dumped one, all right, or any of that stuff, refer her to a DBT therapist, dialectical behavioral therapist. The chances of her going are very low to zero, low chances, almost zero, because it's like having narcissism. Narcissists think they're great, so why would they go get help? You know what I mean? And so similarly with BPD, I mean, they don't think they're the problem. They think they're the victim of everybody else. And so if that's what they think, why would they go get help? And anybody who is going to get psychological help, well, I mean, anyone who's capable of being helped, that's what I mean to say, psychologically, they have to do it. You know what I mean? They have to seek that help. You can't do it for them. You know what I mean? And so that's it. I mean, you can't do the thing for them. All right. They have to do it, and they need help to do it. They can't do it by themselves, but ultimately they got to take ownership for their condition, their problem. And then they have to go get help for that problem. And BPD women are part of their condition is to not take ownership for their problem and to be the victim, or to play that victim card. So you're running into very difficult situation there. But BPD is also could be looked at as a scale. It's not a black and white thing. The DSM has a diagnostic criteria to try to figure out, okay, is this person having this disorder? And if so, what can we do to treat it? And that's the attempt with the DSM, the diagnostic criteria that psychologists use. But I mean, really, it doesn't say a whole lot in terms of the scale. There's only, there's limits to what that DSM can actually do. And so it takes a qualified professional to really try to understand the disorder in the person and figure out treatment. And you know what? Most psychologists are not worth the shit. To be honest with you, I probably just demonetized myself already. But I don't care. It is true. It is what it is. Most, unfortunately, are not worth the crap. I don't care how much education they've had. If you get education in trash theory and your critical thinking skills and your methodology isn't good, and your work ethic isn't good, which I run and see that a lot in the psychology and counseling community. They're just absolutely lazy and intellectually lazy. Well, you're just not gonna, you're not gonna get really good results with that. Now, there's other psychologists and counselors who are excellent, and who do a really good job. So that's another thing, keep in mind is they're not all created equal, just like any profession. So, you got to pick the right ones. And somebody who has borderline personality disorder, it's a very difficult thing to address, even with a proper diagnosis. But back to you want to look at it in terms of like as if it's a scale, almost like autism in a way. Okay, there's people who are mildly autistic, and there's people who are so severely autistic that they can't function. Well, BPD is very similar. Okay, we want to look at it like a scale. There's low level BPD where they could be helped. They have the traits, they have the difficulties, but they're not so far into the spectrum of BPD that they're just a detriment to everybody around them. And then there's, of course, very severe BPD, right? And so the way I look at it is really what they have comorbidity with, or what their the BPD traits are going along with. We're going to go over those traits here today. But I'm looking at, okay, does the person have narcissistic and or psychopathic traits? So I determine that. I look at it like this. If they have psychopathic traits, that's where the person is overtly going to harm you intentionally in order to win. This is that chick that will fake a domestic violence claim, call the police and say you hit her to try to get you picked up to win the argument. The chick that'll call your work. The chick that is cheating, you're cheating on with your wife or some crap, and then she's calling your wife and sitting down at her because all of a sudden her conscience weighs on her so badly, and really she's just trying to overtly harm you because really, you had cheated on her and you were really trying to break it off or something, right? And she's mad now and she's going to win somehow. And so when they get psychopathic, that's when they are trying to win whatever they perceive a win to be, too. It's just their perception of whatever win is. You're not dealing with a mentally healthy or logical or rational person. So who knows what winning means to them, but they will do something overtly to harm you. They will cross lines to harm you. You know what I mean? That includes damaging property, physical damage, getting police involved, getting, your job or vocation in jeopardy, those sorts of things, all right, to get you in trouble. So that's psychopathic. What I consider psychopathic is where they don't have much of a conscience of, of what they're doing for you. BPD women hurt people all the time. And I would say women in this because most people with the diagnosis are women, okay? Whereas most men are not, get a diagnosis of narcissism. or antisocial personality disorder. So generally, I'm saying he when I'm talking about antisocial. Generally, I'm saying she when I'm talking about BPD, just because that's who tends to get the diagnosis. There are genetic differences with how our brains work. And so, falling into this category with women, the way the genetic differences work, they tend to exhibit the BPD traits when they have this disorder, whereas men will tend to exhibit either the narcissist or antisocial traits. So back to it. So that's so nobody gets offended about my gender assumptions or whatever. Gotta be careful, I guess, right? So, and I'll look back into your guys' comments here, periodically, of course. So yeah, so back to it then. Narcissistic traits are where she can't everything what I did sort of like termed or looked at for narcissistic traits and BPD women is that everything they do has some sort of self-interest involving other people. Like they don't do anything just for the express purpose of helping somebody else or for without measuring or keeping score, we'll put it like that. Everything they are doing for someone else is a manipulation or some sort of thing where they're more or less trying to get a benefit from it. They're always keeping score, they're always looking at cost benefit, and they're always trying to make sure they're benefiting at least more than what they're receiving. And so that person wouldn't go help out another person, let's say move, someone's moving from one, location to another. They're moving like their house to another house or apartment to another apartment. They're not going to go help that friend move unless there's some sort of benefit to them, that she can get or garnish from that. And that benefit, usually she's looking at benefiting her somehow in the long run, or giving her some sort of social leverage that she didn't have before. So BPD women tend to have narcissistic and or psychopathic traits or tendencies when they're far on the scale and usually not able to be helped. If they have the narcissistic traits and psychopathic tendencies, they're probably the chances of them actually being able to show up and be different is almost zero. Okay. And that's just statistically speaking, not a lot of people with this diagnosis are able to overcome it or whatever. So that's already regardless of where they are in this spectrum, that's already, they're already handicapped to begin with. And then you add in, so you throw in those other traits too, there is really nothing there. And so when we think like in the red pill spaces and stuff, and the men's dating help spaces, when people just throw BPD around as a slang term, they're usually thinking about the chick who's also has those narcissistic or psychopathic traits. The chick who's gonna, try to, throw a brick through your car or something because, she thinks that you might be cheating on her or whatever, and really you're just going to the gym. That's the crazy stuff, right? The crazy behaviors where she's overtly trying to harm you or completely selfish. We see those as narcissistic or psychopathic, right? Now, here's the thing though. You still got to be careful because just because they might not, there's a lot of BPD women who are not that far in the spectrum who could potentially be more damaging to you than the psychopathic or narcissistic versions. And the reason why is because they sneak up on you, right? But they still do the love bombing. They still bomb you with emotions and love and make you feel amazing. And then they still devalue you and degrade and disregard the relationship and eventually discard you. They still go through the abuse cycle with you. The difference is you're thinking she's not BPD the whole time she's doing it.
Let's face it, if you're a man, then you are probably dealing with problems and challenges with women. Now, I've got some good news and some bad news for you. Your success with women literally boils down to one thing. The bad news is, if you don't have it, nothing else will work. All of the money, good looks, and all of the best pickup and game skills out there will fail without you mastering this one thing. And that one thing is frame. The answers to ending your pain and suffering and to start living an amazing life with women is just one click away. Click the link and let's get started.
You're really unable to see things for how they are and manage those expectations. And so this one really gets guys because they really fall for the girls. They fall in love with them, and they think that the girl's a functional girl. And she tends to be more manipulative than the narcissistic or psychopathic versions. I mean, they will create problems where there's no problems and devalue you in such a way where you don't realize you're being devalued and then discard the relationship, and you'll think it's you that's the problem, or you'll think she's normal healthy and what could I have done. And the reality is, no, she was actually borderline personality disorder, and there was nothing you could have done. She would have destroyed it no matter what. It was just, she wasn't this crazy narcissistic person or psychopathic person, so you didn't notice it. And that's a little bit more covert. They don't really have a term like covert BPD. They do have covert narcissism, but you kind of have the covert version of BPD where, yeah, that's the girl who would help a friend move and who probably is a good friend to other people because she's not in an emotional exchange where her values wrapped up into it. And I'll get into that with a lot of her friends. So she could be a decent friend. You know what I mean? She might have unstable behaviors and stuff, but she can be an okay friend when she doesn't have that narcissistic trait. She's not psychopath. She's not somebody who would cross the line to try to get you fired from your job or get you police action or steal your money or, you know what I mean? She wouldn't overtly try to harm you just to win an argument and do some of the psychopathic things. And so you think she's not BPD because she's not that extreme. But the reality is she does exhibit the 9 traits we'll go over when you actually analyze it. And then in either way, whether she would fit the diagnostic criteria or not isn't important. We're not here to diagnose people. We're just here to determine, are they healthy enough to be in a relationship with? Should I have my emotions and my time and energy wrapped up into this? Right? That's what we're trying to determine. If she has a bunch of these traits, then probably the answer is no. Okay, whether or not she fits the diagnostic criteria or not isn't important. Whether she would pass or fail the BPD test in front of a qualified psychologist doesn't matter. If she has traits that makes her unhealthy to be with long term, then you can't invest your emotional energy into it. And if you are, you're in for a world of problems. All right. But yeah, so the thing is, like, if it doesn't matter whether you're not trying to diagnose her per se, but you're determining if she's capable. And guys get rolled up and wrapped up in these things, and you need to have a lot of mental resiliency. Now, I'm going to do a caveat here because you guys might be watching. I've had now a couple people in my DMs as well as email tell me about their BPD relationships and then how they chose to stay and, how they want to share with me how they stayed in this relationship. And, one guy wanted to do a show on it. I haven't responded to those because I've been busy, but I'll address some of that stuff right now. Guys will go to great lengths to justify their addictions. And when you are with a BPD chick, you're probably addicted to the toxicity of that relationship. You'll use kids as an excuse. You'll use everything as an excuse to stay in that relationship, even though it's bad for you. And so, no, I'm not interested in doing a show where you tell us how to live with your addiction. Okay, that's to put it simply, because that's what it is. I'm going to stay in this BPD relationship. That's you living with an addiction to toxic relationships. I'm not here to promote that. Okay. If you're in a toxic relationship, I want you to get out of the relationship or repair the relationship. Now, for those of you guys that contacted me, if your BPD chick got help, is getting psychological help, is working through it, and your relationship's a lot better and you're a success story, well, that's different. I'm not really interested though in how can a guy survive in the prison that he has created for himself in this commitment that he's in. I'm not really interested in that because it's not, I don't want to give guys who are addicted to their BPD partners in BPD relationships more excuses to stay in those relationships when really they need to be out of them. And that's really the moral of the story. If I get too far in the weeds before I have to go, okay, if anything else, that's the moral of it, is that you can't be in a relationship with somebody who's not capable of being in one. I don't care how sad or tragic her situation is, because she will make you feel bad and make you feel like she's a tragic victim, you know what I mean, of you and the world and her daddy and everybody else. Doesn't matter. If she's not capable, she's not capable. If she's not, and when I say capable, I mean willing to go start to do the actual work to become better. Recognizing there's a problem, recognizing there's a better way, even if she doesn't know how yet, and then starting to work to make that better. If that's something you want to suffer through, well, at least you're moving towards a goal. But suffering through a prison situation where there is no goal and the only thing you have is hope that something will be different someday is not a plan. Okay. And there's no way I've had guys want to get on my channel to talk about suffering through their BPD relationships that are going nowhere and that are stuck and that are toxic. There's no way in hell I'm going to have you on here to let you justify your addiction to a toxic relationship. There's no way. Now, having guys to talk, talking about things like getting through it where she gets help, I mean, that's something we could be talked about. But even then, though, you're talking about like single digit percentages where that actually works. Every guy thinks that they're the exception. When every guy thinks that when the warning signs are there that the chick isn't capable or doesn't see you as the best, every guy wants to think that they're an exception to the rules and that they can make it different. And you know what? Yeah, she cheated on me and she has this history, but guess what? I can make it work out. I'm different. Everybody's different. You're not different, man, probably. You know what I'm saying? And so you want to be different, be alpha. That's different. You want to be different, break your unhealthy patterns, your unhealthy addictions to toxic behaviors and toxic relationships. You want to be different, be a part of a bunch of dudes that are attractive to women because you're on your mental point of origin and you're killing it in life. That's different. That's different. That's different. You want to be different? That's different.